and welcome to Geektopia with me, Adam Carruthers, a space on the internet, as I always say, where I can come and talk all things geek-related. TV shows, video games, comic books, movies, and more. Today, though, what I'm going to be talking about is specifically one episode of a brand new TV show, the debut episode, the premiere of Loki on Disney+. And I'm going to say it straight away, I love this show. End of my episode for now. I'm kidding, I've got a lot to dig into, so let's start. First up, I'm going to talk about the aesthetics of the show because it is so rich and vibrant and beautiful to look at. It is a major throwback to the 1950s. Even the technology, I mean, throughout the course of the show, we discover how powerful this authority really is. Yet the technology they're using, it's like old school tapes. The television screens are really, really dated compared to what we have now of all the flat screens and OLED and 4K, whatever. It's such a wonderful mashing together of old school and new school. And I mean, the design element isn't just for the small things either. We're talking the entire room setting for a scene. The colors, the tone, even the entire world that this is set in. Remember when Loki is looking out and Mobius is like, yeah, go and see. It looked fantastic. It is breathtaking and a joy to behold. So straight away, you're thinking, wow, they thought about everything of the show and I'm liking the vibe already. So, what else? Well, the most important part of the series for me has always been the storyline, and this show just throws you straight into it. And we were seeing the last time we saw Loki in Avengers Endgame when he gets the Tesseract and he disappears, and bloop, he's out there somewhere in the world in the desert. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, it's wasting no time. It does not beat around the bush, so thumbs up to that. I don't want to beat around the bush. It had the comedy elements that we've come to expect from a Marvel show, and from Loki, the way that he's trying to speak to the locals, they don't understand him. His interaction with the Time Variance Authority officers, he's pompous and he's arrogant, and they just shut him down. And that scene where he does get hit and is moving in slow motion, and then you realize only he's in slow motion. That reveal was like, whoa, pretty nifty. The show also painstakingly points out the crux of the main character, the heart of the show. I mean, it is called Loki because he's the main character. And this is not the Loki that we remember, at least not from recent memory, the one that sacrificed himself in a vain attempt to save the world against Thanos. No, this is not the Loki that we've seen since 2012, really. That's the Loki we're getting now. This is the arrogant Loki. This is Loki who hasn't gone through his redemption arc yet, who hasn't patched things up with his brother Thor, who hasn't seen his mother die, arguably because of him, which they also do point out in the show. He hasn't seen his father disappearing before his eyes, to see Asgard decimated by his sister that he never knew he had. None of that has happened to this Loki. So it's a completely different Loki, and we have to reset our minds back to 2012, which is when this Loki is from. On top of that, you have to remember what his motives are at the time, which is more power. 2012 Loki just craves power. But this is where the show got really interesting for me, because it became sort of like a therapy episode where they discuss why he wants so much power. And it does get you thinking. So often we watch a movie, if a bad guy is looking for revenge for something, yeah, I can understand that. There's a relatable sense there. But what about the power? I mean, how much power do you want? This is the Marvel Cinematic Universe we're talking about. He went up against the Avengers. So we're not talking about power within a core family group. We're not talking about power in a city or country. We're talking about the power in the world. But is that enough? I mean, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has shown us it's more than just planet Earth. It spans the entire galaxy, the universe, multiple timelines. Is that what Loki truly wants? No, probably not. What he is a weak person who uses it, as he himself says, as part of his illusion. Now, we've come to accept that from Loki, that he's no longer craving power, but it's never truly explained why and his motives. And bad guys who crave power, it feels almost like a cliche, but at least this attempts to dig a bit deeper. And if I remember the history of Loki in the movies, that he is actually a frost giant, that he was adopted, that he's forever in the shadow of his brother Thor, the big muscular Thor. You can probably understand why he's created this illusion to mask his own weaknesses, getting the gift of the gab to get himself out of situations, or to be conniving and mischievous, as we know Loki can be. And I thought it was really, really interesting to find that element being dug into within the show. Of course, the show can't retread the entire series of movies that we've seen Loki in. I mean, there's no point. So they exposition it effectively by showing his future to him on tape and reminding us, I guess, of everything that Loki has been through. But by the end of all of that, it got me thinking. It felt like they were saying, Loki, you're just a puppet. That's all you are. Your role was to be the antagonist of the Avengers to your brother Thor. You redeem yourself. End of story. You die at the hands of Thanos. Now, he's no longer binded by the timeline. He's able to go and carve out his own path, create his own story. And that got me even more excited to see what else this TV show is going to showcase for us. What about the actors? Well, Tom Hiddleston, as charming and brilliant as Loki as ever. Don't forget, this is a guy that originally auditioned, and you can find it on YouTube, to be Thor. He was rejected for that part, but they were like, oh, you're so good, we're going to make you Loki instead. And he's knocked it out the park. I mean, how often do you see a movie about the big hero, in this case Thor, and the big action movie will then have a villain who will just fade away? You'll forget about the villain after that. Not with Loki. He's continued to be part of the Marvel universe. So many of the villains aren't anymore, or they're just brought back in little cameos. But Loki has proved to be so popular, they can't stay away from him. In fact, so popular, he has his own TV show. And I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. Tom Hiddleston was my senior in school, and I still can't believe it. Yeah, name dropping. Sorry, not sorry. As for all the other actors and actresses in the show, brilliant, of course, but special mention has to go to Owen Wilson. Now, when they announced Owen Wilson was going to be in the show, and when I saw him, I was just thinking of Tom Hiddleston's impression. He's done a few of them, of Owen Wilson. It is spot on. Just seen some interviews, as a matter of fact, leading up to the show. And both of them have said, no, Tom Hiddleston did not do the Owen Wilson impression in front of Owen Wilson, but I wish they did. I bet he did. They're just not wanting to say it publicly. But their chemistry together was so tangible and so good. Because this is the 2012 Loki, so he's full and arrogant and pompous with himself. But up against Owen Wilson as Mobius, who's just like this chilled out dude, the surfer dude, which is what Owen Wilson does brilliantly in everything that he's in, just meshes together so well. I mean, these two opposites attract, I guess you could say. I mean, think about it. The longest uninterrupted scene in the movie was the two of them in the room discussing the motives of Loki, why he does what he does. And it could have been really boring, it could have been really draggy, but it wasn't, because of the dialogue between the two and the chemistry between the two actors. It is a highlight of the show. It truly is. So do I rate Loki higher than the other Marvel shows that we've seen? WandaVision, which already has its full season done, and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which also has already wrapped up its full first season? Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a bit unfair because Loki's only premiered one episode, but wow, what an episode. I mean, why? Well, the mystery element was huge for me because WandaVision had that, particularly in the first half of the show, of the season itself. Remember when WandaVision dropped, it was more than just the first episode on the first day. I think it was 2 episodes. Might have been 3. 2 or 3. But anyway, by the end, I just could not wait to watch the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Now, it didn't end as strongly as it started. It didn't quite stick the landing, so it gets some minus points there. But at least the mystery element was there in the first place. However, Falcon and Winter Soldier just sort of lacked it. I've talked about this before in my review of the Falcon and Winter Soldier. The biggest hook for me at the end of an episode was the wink from Captain America. I needed to know more about this. And Anthony Mackie himself said it. Falcon and Winter Soldier is more like a movie which has been cut up into various parts. Didn't really feel like a traditional TV show. Whereas Loki does. That reveal at the end that the person they're chasing is actually Loki himself. Can't wait to see how they explain that. And Kevin Feige has already said this is going to be the biggest game changer in terms of all the Marvel shows, which does lead me onto my second point. I've said this before, so I'm going to keep it brief. WandaVision, by the end, it felt like the character, the plotline, the storyline had all moved along from what we've seen in the movies. Vision, who had died in the movies, is now back, but completely different. Scarlet Witch has discovered more powers within herself, and she's out for something. We're not quite certain what, but we're going to find out more. Whereas the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you could have skipped the TV show because at the end of Avengers Endgame, Sam is about to become Captain America. He gets the shield. By the end of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it's the same thing. He's just become Captain America. You see him in the suit for the final time in the final episode. That's it. You could skip it to go straight to the Captain America movie, the next one, Captain America 4. You probably wouldn't have missed much. But Loki, like I said, Kevin Feige himself has come out to comment this has got to be the biggest game changer yet, and I'm praying that it lives up to that hype. In fact, the critics have already seen episode 2. So Disney Plus has sent out episode 2 to select critics, and they've said, yeah, episode 2 is a real game changer. And that has just got me eagerly anticipating more of Loki. That's pretty much why I rate this show better than the other two. It could all change, mind. By the end of Loki's first season, we might have more, don't know. Maybe it'll be below the other two. I can't say. But for now, it's definitely off to a better start than the other shows. Yeah, that's my opinion. So what is my rating of the first episode of Loki? Oof, I'm going to have to give this a 9. I'm so invested in it right now. Just the first episode is 9 out of 10 Adam's apples. By the end of the season, it could be a 10, it could be an 8, it could be a 5. No way of telling, but I'm really genuinely excited to find out along the way. So what do you think about Loki's first episode? Make sure you leave a comment. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this video as well. Big shout out to the cast of Loki for doing such a wonderful job, to everybody involved in the production, and to Kate Herron, the director, who's done a magnificent job of bringing all this to life. Episode 2 cannot come fast enough.